Hello, and welcome to Live by Design, a program where I hope you will find content that is informative, insightful, and inspiring. My name is Muadi. I'm a life strategist and a motivational speaker, and I'm your host. And today is Tuesday, November 13th, 2012. I hope that your week is off to a fabulous start. Mine certainly is. I had a very restful, peaceful weekend, and the week has continued along that theme. I've been doing Deepak Chopra's 21-day meditation challenge through Oprah.com, and I've found it a little bit challenging to maintain a regular practice, but I've been doing pretty well. I'm all caught up. I had to do a couple of doubles. I hope they still count, but hey, whatever it takes, right? I'm caught up. Today is day 9, and it's been a very interesting process. And if you're interested, there's still time, I think, for you to register. If you go to Oprah.com, there's a big icon that says, Deepak Chopra's Meditative Challenge. Click on it, sign up, and join us. It's been a really good experience, and I've been enjoying some of the insights that I've gotten through the process, as well as just the challenge of getting into a regular time, a regular space, a regular place to have my meditation practice. And so we're not halfway done yet. We're going to see how it goes. But if you're willing or interested, click on Oprah.com and get some information about that. The topic for today, or the title of today's talk, is Leave the Storytelling to Mother Goose, Forget the Fiction, and Find the Facts. Today we're going to be talking about the habit that some of us have, I know that I used to have, and I still sort of struggle with this a little bit, of telling ourselves stories in our heads about what other people are thinking about us, or what other people are thinking about our situation, about what other people are thinking about a conflict or an issue that we may be having, and this habit that we have of relying on our thoughts about what they're thinking, as opposed to the actual content of what they're thinking to cause us suffering. So again, it's called Leave the Storytelling to Mother Goose, Forget the Fiction, and Find the Facts. So before we get into our topic, of course, I have a few announcements that I want to share with you. As a reminder, I will be live streaming this program on January 1st, 2013 from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Ustream. If you are up and sober and can walk and have all your faculties about you, I hope that you'll join us for the live broadcast. We're going to be setting the foundation, sort of setting the table for what I hope to be, what possibly can be, your best year ever. And I say that every year, that make this your best year ever, because the idea is that while we're here on earth breathing and taking up space, we should be about the business, rather, of up-leveling and upgrading our life and our lifestyles, and making sure that, without driving ourselves too crazy, that we are constantly in that evolutionary flow that is moving us to be the best, the most magnificent, the fullest expression of who we were meant to be in this incarnation, in this time in our lives. So we're going to be live January 1st, 11 o'clock a.m. I'm going to be filming from Boston. And so if you're interested in being a guest on the show and being sort of the model that I use to illustrate some of the finer points we'll be discussing about making a work plan for yourself, identifying goals, objectives for the new year, that type of thing, let me know. I would love to have you on my show. I'm going to find somebody who's going to be my guinea pig. Don't know who it's going to be, so if it's going to be you, if you want it to be you, email me, text message me, Facebook me, tweet me, and we can get that up and going. Also, my next Woman's Worth retreat, half-day retreat, will be on January 12th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston, Massachusetts at the Origination Cultural Arts Center. If you came last year, or earlier this year, we had a wonderful time. We got a lot of good stuff done, and my intention is to go a step even further. And if you're new to my workshops and have never been to any of my programs, you can still participate in that. So that is January 12th. It'll be a Saturday from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. in Boston at the Origination Cultural Arts Center. Also, my brother, Omekonga, a spoken word artist and motivational speaker in his own right, has started a weekly podcast. podcast. And the intention of his podcast is to provide you with some inspirational and motivational content to add to your mental playlist. And it is available on iTunes, and you can actually subscribe to it. So if you go onto iTunes and look up Omekongo Dibinga, Omekongo Dibinga. Actually, you know what? If you just look up Dibinga, you should be able to find it, because there are only a handful of us, and I believe he's the only one of us thus far who has something on iTunes. But check it out. It's a weekly podcast where he gives you, and they're very short. It's not some lengthy half-hour show. They're short, but they're so rich with content that really just helps give you some centering thoughts and gives you some perspectives that might help bring a little bit more peace, a little bit more calm into your life. So check him out. Also, I have two CDs that are coming out. One is called Mind Your Business, How to Create the Relationships That You Want. And that is based on a workshop of that name that I recently launched. And due to popular demand, I've been getting a lot of requests for this. I'm doing a compilation CD of my meditative thoughts. Every week, those of you who are on my mailing list receive a meditative thought from me. Again, something just to sort of center you and help you, give you something to focus your attention on for the week, and I will be compiling them into a CD. So look for some information about both of those things. They should be available mid-December, definitely by the time I get to Boston for Origination's annual Kwanzaa show. I hope to have a few of those in hand. So I believe those are all of my announcements. Oh, one more thing. At the end of this particular episode, I'm going to be re-airing or resharing a clip from one of my blogs from my trip to Ghana. I shared it on my Facebook page, but then I realized that several of you are not friends of mine on Facebook, and so you may have missed it. So for some of you, it might be a repeat, but it's an important message that I learned about reminding myself about my purpose. And I really think it's an important message that I really hope that you find some value with as well. So that's going to appear at the end of the show. Those are all of my announcements. You can always join me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. I think that's all of them, right? To find out what it is that I'm up to. Just FYI, I'm not joining Pinterest, and I'm not joining Tumblr. I can barely manage the social networks that I'm on right now. So if you want to find me, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, that's it. You can also send me an email at mdibinga@muadiunlimited.com, and you can reach out to me that way as well. Okay, so we are going to take a break, and when we return, we are going to get into the conversation about storytelling. Do you tell stories? We'll be right back. Bye-bye. Welcome back. Today we're talking about storytelling and how the habit that some of us have, as I said, I've had and continue to work on, this habit that we have of making up stories about other people in our head, how it causes us to suffer. Making up stories about what people think about us, or what people are really trying to say to us, or what the hidden meaning is behind other people's actions are, how it causes us to suffer. Michael Beckwith is a spiritual teacher who you've heard me speak about several times on this show, and he says that pain is an inevitable part of the human experience, but prolonged suffering is optional, and prolonged suffering is created by the choices that we make. One of the actions that we take that prolongs and causes us suffering is when we read into the actions of other people, when we attempt to read their mind, or when we add stories or create stories around certain facts that just don't serve us and cause us to suffer. I'm going to give you a very specific example. When I lived in D.C., my brother, my sister-in-law, and my niece moved into a new home. And I was living with them at the time in their first home, and we all moved together. And on the first floor of the house, they built a room so that I could have privacy, I could be by myself. It's now a guest room since I don't live there anymore. But when the room was first built, it did not have a closet. And so I initially kept some of my stuff in the hallway closet, and then some of my stuff I was intending to buy a closet for the room, like one of those portable closets, so that I could have all my stuff in one space, etc. So one day, my brother came home from work and he asked me if I wouldn't mind moving my stuff from the front closet to the back closet. Same floor, maybe 5 to 6 feet apart. But he was asking because, of course, the front closet was where they wanted to put the shoes and the coats and, have easy access to that, which made it a lot easier, like when the girls had to go to school and all this other fun stuff. So, of course, it was a very simple request and no big deal, right? Unfortunately, for all concerned, I heard the request, but I filtered it through my own sort of storytelling machine. And rather than hearing the question, can you just move your stuff? I heard, your stuff is in the way, you're in the way, can you move your stuff so we can have more space? I received it as being a statement of my not being, not that I wasn't fully welcome, but that I was kind of in the way. And it's interesting because if you look at the facts of the matter, the facts were that I had keys to the house, I had keys to the cars, I had full reign of everything, and we were living basically like we lived when we were growing up, just as one big happy family. So much so that now when I go back to DC, or what I should say when I come back to DC, I don't even call folks, I don't even call them to tell them I'm coming. I just show up, turn up, open the keys, turn off the alarm, and I'm here. I don't have to call ahead or anything. So based on that environment, who would ever have thought that I would be so silly, right, as to think that him asking me to move my stuff a couple of feet down the hallway was an indication that I wasn't really wanted. The problem was not the request. The problem was how I received the request. I let it filter through my own personal experience, my own feelings from way back in the day, and we can talk about that, that's in a whole nother show, of not always feeling like I belonged as a child. And that's a story for another time. But the point is that the beliefs that I created about myself from childhood that I still carried with me as an adult, those things, that belief system filtered the words that were said to me. So although his intention was just to ask me to move my stuff, I received it differently. And I compounded, I took a really small question and I changed it into a statement on my value. I changed it into a statement of, well, what does he really think? Does he really want me to be here? I created this whole story around it, so much so that we actually had a little bit of a exchange, like a little bit, it wasn't an argument, I don't think, but more like we fussed about it a little bit, because he was like, what's the big deal? And of course, on the surface, it's not a big deal if I'm just dealing with the facts that were presented to me. But when I add my own history, when I add my own story, when I put it through my clouded lens, then it becomes a big deal. And he's not privy to what's behind the lens, so he's looking at me like, what is this chick's problem, right? So, we subsequently, of course, we worked it out. And it was an eye-opener for me, and it was one of the catalysts that really got me to really start to dig deep and see where else I do that. So, and I began to work on it, and I've seen so much progress, so much so that just yesterday, I think it was yesterday, he sent me a text because I had left the charger for the GPS in the car, and it's an electrical car, so it drains the batteries. I'm working, I get a text from my brother, oh, Muadi, by the way, can you make sure that you don't take out that you unplug the GPS, right, because it drains the battery. I was like, oh, cool, didn't know, sent it out, sent the text, and I went about my business. And it wasn't until like an hour later that I was like, oh, wow, oh, snap, I didn't go off. I didn't start thinking to myself, well, maybe I shouldn't use the car. I just sent a text and went on about my business. So there's progress. That means there's hope for you. But I really want to be clear. That's what I mean about the storytelling, right? So it also happens when, we have breakdown in communication with somebody, or you're in an argument with somebody, maybe in a fight with a loved one, and rather than asking them clarifying questions about what they're really thinking or what do they really mean, you assume that you know what they're going to say. You assume that you already know what's in their head. Right? So, oh, I'm not going to ask him because I know if I ask him, he's going to say A, B, or C. Well, I'm not going to share this with her because I know what she's thinking. All of a sudden, not only are we storytellers, but we're also like clairvoyants. And the way it causes us to suffer is because when you don't ask the clarifying, empowering questions, you're walking around with misinformation. And you're walking around with a sort of distorted view of reality and misinterpretation of facts, and a distorted view of reality is always going to cause you to suffer. Not only does the storytelling cause us to suffer, it also wastes time. because you end up arguing, fussing, and fooling around with nonsensical issues that really are not a big deal when the underlying truths, the underlying problems, the underlying, the bigger ticket items that need to be addressed aren't being addressed. Example, with my brother, the clothes in the closet was not the issue that needed to be addressed. The issue that needed to be addressed is that why, despite all the evidence to the contrary, do you still feel uncomfortable in this space? That's the bigger question. But instead of taking the time to focus on that, I'm worrying about why my shoes have to go 3 feet down the hall, right? So when we tell stories, it causes us to suffer, it wastes time, and it keeps us from focusing on what is really important, and it keeps us from identifying the spaces where we can allow some healing to come in. Okay, let's take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back. We're going to pick this up, talk a little bit more about the impact of the storytelling, and then we're going to get into a little bit about the why do we do it? What's the motivation behind it? Okay, don't go too far. We'll be right back. So again, today we're talking about storytelling and the fictions that we tell ourselves about how other people are viewing us, what other people are thinking about us, and how it causes us to suffer, and the importance of dropping the fiction and going for the facts, finding out the truth as a way of alleviating some suffering and bringing a little bit more peace, not only into your relationships, but just into your life in general. Now, before the break, we talked a little bit about what it is, how we define the storytelling. We talked about the impact. We talked about the fact that it causes you to suffer, it causes you to waste time, and it costs you the opportunity of focusing on what the real issue is that drives that type of behavior. I want to talk a little bit about why we do it. Some of the reasons that we do it are kind of deep, and some of them aren't quite so deep. There is a concept called shadow beliefs. I've heard this life coach. She's also considered to be a spiritual teacher, Debbie Ford. You can find her online at debbieford.com. She does a lot of work on what's called shadow beliefs, and basically it was what I was talking about earlier. These underlying beliefs that we have about ourselves, that we develop as children, that we carry into our adulthood, that filter and sort of shape how we see, hear, and experience life. So again, mine, when I was younger, was that I did not belong here. And that feeling of not belonging carried through into my adulthood and really impacted my ability to form solid relationships with people. And as a result of that, because of that shadow belief, when I would make assumptions about what people really thought about me, I would make assumptions of how people really felt about me, not based on what they were saying, but based on what I would tell myself they weren't saying, or what I would tell myself that they were thinking. Again, the stories that I told myself about these people that really were something, in many cases, were not aligned with the facts that I had in front of me. And so a shadow belief is, I'm going to read this so we're clear, is an unconscious belief that influences our entire lives, tells us what we can and cannot do, and drives our behaviors. And one of the behaviors that is often a result of these shadow beliefs are the storytelling. Cheryl Richardson, another life coach, explains that shadow beliefs can prevent you from getting what you want out of life. What you truly believe about yourself can stop you from having abundance, from having love, from having friendships. Some examples of what core shadow beliefs include that there's something wrong with me. I am not lovable. I do not deserve what I want. Love does not last. I am worthless. I'm never going to be successful, and so on and so forth. And so as an adult, if you see the world through any of those lenses or a combination thereof, it impacts your ability to really experience life, and it impacts the way you receive information and the way you receive other people. So that's one of the reasons, that's one of the things that causes us to sort of not accept love, not accept friendship, and to make mountains out of molehills, because we have a viewpoint of ourselves and we look for evidence to support that viewpoint. And we sometimes project onto other people that their words and that their actions line up with what our true beliefs are about ourselves. So that's one of the reasons why we tell stories. Another reason why we tell stories is out of fear. Because it does take courage. It takes a little bit of courage to confront people when you're in conflict or when there's a communication breakdown, because some people are not receptive to that. I wasn't always receptive to feedback. I wasn't always receptive to the clarifying questions. And I could sometimes put up a wall that really kept people from even approaching me. And so sometimes it's easier for us to make up a story about what somebody's going to say to us, how somebody's going to respond to us, what somebody's really thinking about us. It's easier to make the assumption than it is to actually confront them, because we are sometimes afraid of what their reaction is going to be. And another reason why we tell stories is because we're just spiritually lazy. Some of us, because let's face it, it's easier just to assume that you know what someone is thinking, because then it takes you out of the role of having to be responsible. It takes you out of that space of having to sort of maybe stand up and asking the clarifying questions. It might take a little bit more time to get to the root of the matter than it would if you just allowed yourself to go on your assumptions. So I could assume that somebody, well, I'm not going to ask this person if they want to go out to the movies or whatever, because I'm sure they're probably busy. I like this guy, but he hasn't heard from me. I haven't heard from him in a couple of days, so I'm just going to assume that he's not interested, right? Either because I'm afraid to call him and find out, what's the deal, or because I'm just lazy, right? So whatever the reasoning is, whether it be the shadow beliefs, whether it be the fear, whether it be the spiritual laziness, the result telling ourselves stories, the result of not getting all of the facts, the result of walking sort of through making these assumptions about people that aren't even probably true, is that we rob ourselves of true soul-to-soul connections, true peace, and really having that real feeling of freedom and expansion that can come when you make a real connection with someone, or when you're living your truth as opposed to your shadow belief. Let's take another little quick break. We're going to come back and talk about what we can do to turn things around for you, okay? We'll be right back. So we talked about storytelling. We identified what it looks like. We talked a little bit about where it comes from. Let's talk a little bit about how it impacts us. Now let's talk about what we can do to turn some things around and invite some healing into your life, okay? The first thing that I want you to do is, when you find yourself in a situation where you're in conflict with someone, or some of your shadow beliefs are sort of bubbling up to the surface and causing you to question yourself, assume the best. Assume the best case scenario. In life, we often have an opportunity to assume the worst case scenario and the best case scenario. And I know people say, let's assume the worst because then we won't be disappointed, we'll be prepared, etc. Why bother? I say, when you're dealing with people, particularly people that you care about, particularly people who you have a history with, if you find yourself at a crossroads, if you find yourself in a space where you feel the storytelling trying to come in, or you have a communications breakdown, assume the best. Give them the benefit of the doubt and ask them a clarifying question. Assume the best, that it's all working out in your favor. Maybe you're exaggerating something in your mind. Maybe it's your imagination. Give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe you misunderstood them. Maybe you misinterpreted something that they said. Maybe they didn't hear you correctly and you need to repeat yourself. Ask a clarifying question. Hey, I feel like you don't really want me here. Is that true? And yeah, it's scary because, we're not used to this. We're used to text messaging people and Facebooking people. We're not used to the one-on-one. And don't do this, by the way. Don't use electronics. Face-to-face or over the phone. Come on now with the technology already, okay? But again, we're so used to all this technology that we've lost the art of really conversing with people and being in people's faces and being in people's spaces and presence and having that kind of dialogue with them. So just ask them a clarifying question. Hey, you said this or you didn't say that. I think it means this or I think it means that. Am I right? What do you think? And if you get an answer and you still don't feel like it really sits with you, then go on an evidence hunt. Example, with my brother and them, they always said, we love having you here. It's so great to have family, and it's so great for the girls, etc., etc. And in those moments where I might have felt like, am I in the way? Then evidence, collect some evidence. I have keys, I I have the alarm. I'm not sitting outside waiting for somebody to let me in. I don't have to tiptoe around the place. I don't have to beg to use the car, anything like that. I have complete and total freedom in that space. So that's the evidence that supports what's being said. So if the storytelling starts to get a little bit too much, or I start to, veer off the course of sanity, I can collect evidence to support what I'm saying. Go on an evidence hunt. Get help. Debbie4.com, for those of you who have some really deep challenges relative to your shadow beliefs and if you're really challenged with your ability to connect with people, and maybe you assume people are always talking about you or assuming the worst in people, get some help. Debbie4.com. Another woman who I like, Byron Katie, K-T-I-E, first name spelled B-Y-R-O-N, ByronKatie.com. She has this thing called The Work, where she runs her clients through a list of questions that helps them get beyond the storytelling and allows them to sort of lay and sort of rest in the facts. The truth can't hurt you. The truth can't hurt you. Nothing can hurt you. Not knowing the truth, making assumptions about people, that can hurt you. So we know what to do, right? Stop telling stories. Leave the storytelling to Mother Goose. Forget the fiction. Find the facts. Live in the realm of truth. Assume the best. Give people the benefit of the doubt and ask clarifying questions. You are strong enough to withstand any answer, any response. There's nothing that anyone can say that can break you or break down. You're mightily built. So you can withstand the truth. But you can also alleviate so much suffering, so much pain, so much indecision, so much questioning if you get out of the storytelling mode and get into the fact-finding mode. Okay? I hope this was helpful to you. Going through this actually was pretty helpful to me because it reminded me of just how many years I have spent in that space of storytelling and how much better it feels on this side of things. And that's what I want for each and every one of you. Okay? Reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, or LinkedIn if you have any questions, if you have ideas for some stories or some topics that you would like for me to cover. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Live by Design. In the meantime, I'm going to leave you with this video, a video entry blog that I did air on Facebook. But again, I'm offering that again in this space for those of you who are not friends of mine on Facebook. It's a commentary about purpose and an aha moment, an awakening that I had while I was visiting Ghana. I hope you have a fabulous week. Be good to yourself. Be good to others. Know that life loves you. And I will see you soon. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Good morning and greeting from Accra. This is Muadi Dibinga, and it is Thursday, our second to last day in country. I don't know where the time has gone. I'm not quite ready to go back. We leave tomorrow, and I can easily do another week at the least here. I've been having a really transformative time, and we have a really cool group, wonderful group of young people that we're traveling with, and it's been really amazing. Yesterday we visited Cape Coast, where we walked through and had a tour of the castle that was used as a docking station, port of call for the slave trade here in Ghana. And we were taken through the history of not only how it came to be built and what transpired there, but we also had an opportunity to walk in the actual dungeons and the holding cells and the other rooms, and hear firsthand, well, not firsthand, but hear about the torture that the Africans who were enslaved experienced. We learned about, pregnant women being thrown overboard before they got to their final destination so that those who enslaved them would not be exposed as rapists, and how they came, to Ghana and other places in Africa without their wives so they can basically rape and inflict pain and suffering on top of the taking of the freedoms of the women, how the men were subjected to atrocities and indignities that I can't even begin to repeat here, because it was a painful and very difficult experience, and I couldn't even blog about it yesterday because I'm still pretty shaken by it. I will say that it was moving beyond words to have my feet stand in the same place as the actual Africans who were enslaved, and to smell the air, and to be in the darkness, and to really look out into the ocean and know, with no land in sight, to be able to sort of put myself in a situation where I was wondering how I would be, who I would be, how my consciousness would be if I were ripped from everything that I knew to be true about life in the world and taken into this place of darkness by people that didn't look anything like me. And also sometimes at the hands of my own, brothers and sisters as well. I knew about the slave trade. I know about the history of slavery, both from what I learned in school, which was not much, but primarily from what I was taught at home and through my own research and my own initiative at the encouragement of my parents. I will say that the lesson that I walked away with is, well, for me, is that I have to make sure that I am living to my highest potential and living to my highest calling and continue to strive to reach my highest level of consciousness for those that were not able to do so. For the babies and the women and the men who were buried in that ocean. For the men who were killed and allowed to die a slow, painful, agonizing death because they dared to rebel against those who came to enslave them. For the many that didn't even make the journey to the coast to get on the boats because they couldn't survive the treacherous walk of miles and miles and miles to get there, to get to that final destination. For those who made it over to their final destinations and were treated as no human being should be treated, it's my responsibility to make sure that as I live my life and I strive and I struggle to fulfill my own promise, that I also carry forth the intention to honor those who did not make it, to honor those who had to experience a level of treachery that I can't even wrap my brain around. It is my responsibility to live their promise as well. We are all connected, not just with the living, but also with those who passed. And that experience yesterday was something that I think everyone should experience at some point in their lives, so that it really can help shift their consciousness about the language that they use. The use of the N-word, for example, and the way we live, and the drinking, and a lot of other things that we do to debase ourselves. There are people buried at the bottom of the ocean who did not have an opportunity to live to their full potential and to live to their full promise. And so I encourage everyone to stop and reflect upon the extent to which your life represents something that those who did not live would be proud of. That their sacrifice was not in vain, that they're not forgotten, and that they were not disposable, that they were human beings who did not have an opportunity to flourish in this world as God intended. So those of us who have that opportunity, we have to make sure, right, that we're living it to our fullest. I have to stop now. That was yesterday, Wednesday in Ghana, and we have 2 more days, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.